Omar, how's it going?
Hey, going good.
Man, it's up 10% today. Wild, wild. Before Grant gets a chance to um, walk us down, would you like to share how excited you are?
Um, you know, I'm not excited. I'm content. I don't get upset on red days. I don't get overexcited on green days. I think when you look at this in the grand scheme of things, it's all going to look flat. So, we've got a long way to go.
Grant, how excited are you? Grant, I gotta tell you, I posted one of my posts today was, what do you want to say to Tesla Bears? And Omar retweeted it, and then Elon replied to Omar's tweet. So getting a lot of replies. And what I usually do is just kind of go through my notifications. I monitor my notifications. So when someone replies to a tweet, I don't see what they're replying. And all day I've been getting these replies that make me like scratch my head, and then I realize they're actually to bears. How do you feel about it?
It's not a great stock price movement for my position for sure. I don't really care about whatever people are tweeting at you, but yeah, I just don't get it. I mean, I have conviction that this is not going to end well. Ultimately, I don't know if I'll make any money on this, but anyone tracking the long run expectations and how Tesla's performing against them can see that the business is not doing well. That doesn't stop people from getting ebullient every time they beat a wildly lower expectation that's, down double digits from even a couple months ago. So I don't know.
Ellie, I saw your post, the sunset picture. Are you on a boat right now?
Yeah, I'm with customers on the boat, and just love the energy. Like Omar, I'm not really excited about the stock itself, but I'm just really happy, to hear all the positivity and people happy and all that stuff. Just a great way to finish the day. Sunset, a boat, and Tesla talk.
When are we going to get an invite to your boat?
Oh, you will get one, definitely. Don't worry, I'm working on it.
Grant, I mean, you got to be excited about at least the Tesla energy part of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a good result. I don't know. I don't follow that part of the business a ton because it's not a material part of revenues, but I can definitely understand people getting excited about that.
I mean, triple digit growth, quarter over quarter. It's probably going to continue in the next quarter for a few quarters, probably. And gross margins on Tesla Energy are going to be stellar. Omar, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to continue. We don't even have the Shanghai mega factory online yet. I expect that to account for more than 50% of their global energy storage deployments. And Lathrop, I think, is still scaling. So, really, you look at the data center trend, you look at obviously the growth of electric vehicles, things moving to heat pumps, just general growth in electric demand. It really seems like we're going to see long term secular growth in energy storage deployments. It's not even as cyclical as the EV market, obviously. We've seen even through downtrend, even through high rate environments, energy storage deployments have continued to grow. So I think we're kind of just getting started. They're annualized, if you extrapolate this quarter out, doing like 40 gigawatt hours, which is like more cells than Giga Nevada produces. So it really is an insane amount of megapacks, and I think it's going to be increasingly material in the future.
Yeah, if anybody wants to come up and share their kind of excitement with others or thoughts on production deliveries or energy deployments, you're welcome to request to speak. We have a great set of people I see in the listener mode. Larry is welcome to come up. Yoda is welcome to come up. And really anybody, you're welcome to come up and share your thoughts. Grant?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get going before too long here, so we'll share some of my thoughts. I mean, definitely didn't expect that in terms of the deliveries. I feel like it's interesting. It'll be curious to see how that translates into the financials. I'm on the bear side of things, so I'm seeing a lot of people who are obviously surprised, but also, curious what may be going on behind the scenes. I think just to air out a couple of things that are unvalidated that are just kind of popping around in people's heads on this side. There are stories from the past around Tesla classing used vehicle sales as deliveries. I think that there's been some ambiguity surrounding the delivery definition in the past. I don't know if that's real. I'm just saying I am curious on that. And then there's also rumors of them, wholesaling some of these things. It's unclear if some of this was fleet sales, but I do think that they outperformed in a very surprising way that caught a lot of people off guard. So it'll be interesting to see what actually drove that, and whether or not that kind of materializes in a positive or negative way inside of the financials when those come out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I actually posted about that too, Grant. Great question. I pinned it at the top of your screens, and some folk, we already have a couple of dozen answers. This post says the absolute crushed all deliveries estimates. What do you think is driving this demand? And there's some good responses in there. You can read through it, Grant. I know you don't like to do a lot of research, but this is your, I do the questions and you can just read through the answers if you want. Just invest like 10 seconds to research. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it at the top of the chat. Did you add it there, or where is it?
Yeah, it's up there. While you read.
Now, sorry.
Machine.
Yeah, it's really fun to hear the old Tesla Q fraud points come out every time something doesn't go their way. They're just immediately like, oh, deliveries were higher than we thought. Oh, there must be some backhanded, under the table shenanigans. Where I don't think it's that difficult. It's they cut prices.
Yeah. There was a particularly good one. Machine, go ahead. Why'd you mute yourself and then raise your hand? Just keep talking.
Well, first of all, it said reconnecting. I wanted to pause so everyone could stare at my eye for a second. And, I wanted to add, today I went to the actual gym for the first time in a long time versus working out at home. And there's all these stupid bros who just sit on these machines for an hour. They were just focused on their chest for an entire hour, just sitting there. And there's one other guy who just sat in the squat rack for an entire hour. They probably did 5 sets total in the whole hour. And all I could think was, this is Grant. These dumbasses are probably looking for fraud and Tesla in between their sets. And that's why they're so small. And I'm big.
Grant.
It sounds similar to me. I think if you wanted to have like a very high conviction, it being me type thing. Sorry, I'm distracted. If they're counting out their reps really loudly, like a borderline shout, then that would be me. If they're being a little more modest and inhibited about it, those guys are pussies.
Unfortunately, I couldn't hear you before. So all I heard was, you're a pussy. I don't know.
Come on. You can't do that.
My bad. But no, I mean, yeah, whatever. I'm still not working out a lot, but I don't use machines. Machines are for wimps. I feel like Machine would agree with me. It must be nice to be able to work out.
Edward.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about the energy. It's one thing that Elon hasn't been banging the table on. He talked about it, I think 2020 or 2021, and he said it almost vehemently that energy was going to outpace auto. I don't know when. He didn't say it was going to outpace in 2026 or 2027, but I think that reality is starting to sink into people's heads now that the energy deployments are starting to ramp up faster than auto.
Machine.
Yeah, I think energy obviously was a real positive surprise. We were kind of expecting this to happen at some point, quarter to quarter. And I agree that Musk hasn't been banging on the table about energy for a long time, but apparently he has been banging some Neuralink employees, and now he's got another kid.
This is not how I expected this space to go today. Omar,
Actually, that kid was conceived through in vitro fertilization.
for your information, Machine, if you need to know. Machine, there was a good reply today. There was a poll today. Who's going to be banging more out, Tesla or Machine's mom this year? Did you see that one?
I did. You know, I am noticing the amount of posts tagging me or my mom are rising exponentially.
There's actually an account called Machine's mom now. And she said last night, she said, you may laugh at the jokes, but my son's analysis is on point.
It's good she's protecting me.
Yeah. Ellie, maybe Elon will follow it. Ellie.
Yeah, maybe it's a silly question, but one we can explain, please. What kind of small business might be a potential buyer for this battery that one of you guys posted today?
Sorry, what was the question?
The energy. So they have this product with a big discount, like 1 million 1 million something. So my question is, what kind of a small business might be interesting in this kind of battery?
Machine.
Oh God, I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Just do it.
Well, I was just gonna say, you know, there's a lot of specific companies or groups of people who can't really use gas or generators because of where they put the equipment. For instance, in tunnels underground, and so I think they might be users of this technology.
What were you really going to say?
Well, I'm just leaving it a little bit to the imagination, but there are some places that rely on miles and miles of tunnels to operate their quote company, utilizing international funds, and this could be a great an opportunity for them to have power supply funded by the U.S. and Europe.
Interesting. Omar, which population do you think he's referring to?
I don't know what population.
Never mind. All right. So the stock is up 10%. Omar, the stock has gone up it's almost doubled now in the last, it's up like 70% in 2 months. Do you see this continuing?
I don't know. And I don't think it really matters. I mean, I think this is really a multi-trillion-dollar company long term. I don't think the challenges with the auto business are over, but clearly the idea that this is some business that's just falling apart have been grossly over exaggerated by shorts and by people who hate Elon for whatever reason. I believe BYD delivered 426,000 pure electric vehicles, and I believe 500 something thousand hybrids, for a total of almost a million vehicles in the second quarter. But that makes Tesla the number one manufacturer of battery electric vehicles in the world once again. They were number one in the first quarter, they're number one in the second quarter. Everyone was like, BYD had one quarter in Q4 where they delivered more pure BEVs than Tesla, and everyone in the media, like, they literally could not say BYD without saying BYD, which has now unseated Tesla to become the number one EV maker in the world, even though for 2023 Tesla outsold them, and it's looking like they're going to outsell them in 2024 too. So they never actually outsold them for a full year. So, although deliveries are down year over year, really I'm saving my celebration for when we see record deliveries, which I think we have a chance of doing in Q3 or Q4. But you number one in the world isn't too bad of a result.
Machine.
I think there's a real chance that BYD could take the crown back, especially if they offer a dong, bring your dong with each vehicle. Just make sure that they're in China, that they're smaller.
Gagan.
Yeah, my question is like related to this other models, right? Which is including Cybertruck, right? How we are looking forward ongoing, right? So how much we are expecting, like it's say 50-60% at this moment, and what pace we are thinking it can go further.
Wait, what's the 50-60%?
50-60% of other model, right? Right. This one is like 21K, right? So which including the Cybertruck, right? So my point is what aspect we are thinking ongoing quarters about the
So
Cybertruck.
I think it's about, if you look at the recall data, it looks like it's about maybe 8,000-ish units for Cybertruck. So let's say 8 to 10,000 units. So that would be about, 13,000 SNX, which is a fairly low number, about 50% off peak production and delivery levels. And then, 8,000 units for Cybertruck, that's already outselling the Model S and the Model X individually. So out of the other models, Cybertruck is already the biggest portion of that. And I expect that to, become even more stark in the coming quarter. So my best estimate, 8 to 10,000 Cybertrucks and 10 to 13,000 SNX. And we
Grant,
should have some detailed registration data that'll come out and give us some better visibility into that breakdown.
Grant.
Yeah, on the world's biggest battery electric vehicle thing, it just doesn't really matter, and I wouldn't hang your hat on it too much because I think BYD will be the car company to hold that mantle before too long. That feels somewhat inevitable. I can't remember what this is in response to, but I mean, the company is doing poorly. The stock price is doing great, but Yaman, I think you'd said that the price is up 70% the last 2 months or something like that. I don't recall the exact number. There's been nothing in the last 2 months to actually support that making sense. Period. Deliveries are over expectations that have been slashed by, way more than the outperformance mandates. People were talking about 20 million deliveries in 2030. Production's down this year. Like, it's just all of that is a complete pipe dream. And I think what we're seeing from Autonomy, which is a really important thing for the future of this company, is that Tesla may or may not be able to do it with hardware 3. They may or may not even be able to get the number up. This promised 5 to 10x improvement is going to be another in the long list of promises that Elon made that failed to materialize. No one.
Okay, thank
feels
you.
bad about
Edward,
that,
didn't you say you were going to go soon, Edward?
Yeah, I was just wondering if anybody knows anything if they're going to be potentially profitable on the Cybertruck. I know they raised the prices and kind of understand how Tesla operates when they come to margins, but I mean, does anybody have any information if they're, going to make 2,000, 5,000, take losses on them when it comes to foundation or even non-foundation series?
Omar.
Well, I wasn't really paying attention.
Hold, just 1 second. Lincoln, are you there? Lincoln?
Yeah, I'm here.
Dude, I literally just saw somebody who looks exactly like you. Seriously. Like,
Oh man, did he have women flocked around him?
yes.
I knew it.
I am not fucking kidding you. I am not kidding you. There's one guy I'm looking at right now, and he's not on the phone. So I don't know what the hell's going on. He looks
It's
exactly
me.
like you.
It's me.
No, it's not. Shut up.
All
And then
right.
there's literally, I think his girlfriend, like all over him. So when you said, "Is there a woman?" I'm like, what is going on right now? Okay. Anyway, sorry, Omar.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's kind of funny to hear bears just desperately try to piece together some story about how this is a disaster. But the reality is, the future of vehicles is electric. We're moving into a world where the majority of cars sold are going to be electric. Consumers are moving rapidly towards these vehicles, and you look at the long-term trend of battery cost decline, it's just hard to see how ICE vehicles are going to be competitive. And many people, including bears, are still in denial about this. But that is the future. And who's producing more BEVs than anyone else on Earth? It's Tesla. They have experience. They're building out the supply chains. This matters. And in compare, especially when you look in BYD by comparison to Tesla, BYD, of course, was making gas cars until a few years ago. Now they're only making hybrids or pure EVs, but they still make more cars with gas engines than pure BEVs. So they have this exposure to sort of the decline of gas cars that Tesla doesn't have. Tesla's a pure EV play, and it's making more pure EVs than them. So they're really kind of unique in this, and they're one of the few companies to actually be profitable at this scale. And when you look at the lineup compared to BYD has a lot of really low cost models that hit price points for the Chinese market that Tesla doesn't even touch. I mean, for Tesla to actually be outselling them, selling, $4,000 electric vehicles in China with a price that's so much higher is really remarkable. And we know that, of course, they're actually working on lower cost models that they're going to make on the Model 3 and Model Y production line. We know they're working on things like the robotaxi with the unboxed process. So BYD is certainly formidable. I wouldn't be surprised if a Chinese company does end up being number one long term. But I think Tesla outselling them even before getting those low cost models out. Imagine when they get those smaller, lower cost models out for China, for Europe. I could see a path to them actually maintaining the sales crown just, based off the strength of their products. People really love it. And then, oh, Grant saying FSD is never going to be achieved. I mean, again, just take a look at the videos I'm posting. I got 11.4.2. It's a new build. Everyone's going to be trying it soon, and they're going to see what it is. You know, he was underselling it by saying 5 to 10x improvement in miles per intervention. You basically just almost never have to intervene. And you can see it driving an hour from Palo Alto to San Francisco on hardware 3. That's a hardware 3 model, okay? We haven't even gotten to hardware 4 yet. So, as much as you can say, "Oh, lie, failed promise," that's a real thing that's useful to people today. That someone who's in Palo Alto can say, "Take me to San Francisco, push a button, and it'll take them there, and they don't have to touch anything." That's a really useful product today. And honestly, Michael Dell's using it, everybody's using it because it's super useful. So I think this sort of bullshit narrative that shorts have constructed is just flying fast in the face of reality. People are just really liking the products. It's a game-changing product, and they're not crazy. As much as the bears want to say, "Oh, these are insane people. They're like part of a cult. They're in love with Elon." No, this is like ordinary people. Some old Asian woman, you look inside the Tesla, you see who's driving. It's ordinary people. Ordinary people who just looked at the product and said, "This is making my life better." And this trend is only just starting. Rumors of the demise of autonomous electric vehicles have been greatly exaggerated by people who wanted to see Tesla fail. But unfortunately for them, it's not failing.
Speaking of people who want to see Tesla fail, Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, that was a lot. I think you spoke for a long time there. That was interesting stuff. I mean, EVs are the future, sure. That doesn't explain why the stock is up to the extent that it is amidst falling expectations and everyone's slashing demand. I do applaud them for cutting back on production. I think it's 15% less than it was last quarter, last year in the same quarter. So that's a smart thing to do because they're not able to sell these cars at healthy margins. So the decision to both offer financing to make them more affordable for other people, even if at the expense of their own margins, along with the decision to cut back on production. Those are smart ones. Not fully aligned with what Omar is saying, but that's okay. I also was really interested in the claim that Elon undersold it at a 5 to 10x improvement. I will be super interested in seeing whether or not the data aligns with what you're saying there. I don't think it will. I don't think anyone really cares, but I think it's important again to kind of take stock of what the expectations are at a given point in time, track how things develop, track how people perform, how the company sells, all these things, and then say at the tail end if it's subpar, hey, that was bad. Maybe this company isn't crushing. There's
Okay.
no like conspiratorial bear narrative about all of this stuff. It's literally just look at the expectations around deliveries and EPS over the last couple years. Look how they've shifted and look what the company has done.
Okay,
The
Greg, thank
PE
you.
is
You're
going
done.
up.
Yeah, I think the pop in energy. I agree with Omar. We're just getting started. Energy across the U.S. today, I think roughly around 1.5% of all energy is used by data centers and increasingly AI workloads, and that is going to increase by conservative estimates to 8% by 2030, which is roughly a 40% year-over-year increase. I think Tesla's energy business will probably pay dividends going forward to supply and store energy and manage energy to support the growing, ever growing AI applications. So yeah, super excited about that. I think Q2, um, all the major negative things, in my opinion, has been lifted. We've officially crossed, I think, the lull between the two growth waves, and super excited to see what August 8th has to unfold.
Omar.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ability of bears to try and spin any minor sort of stumble negatively is very impressive, and it really convinced a lot of people, right? We're talking about FUD here. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And when you try something, when you try anything, no matter how perfect you are, nobody's just going to kill it every single day. Never make any mistakes. Never have any stumbles. Never have a bad quarter. There's going to be bad quarters. There's going to be more bad quarters in the future, right? But zoom out and man, what an incredible story. And when you have those moments where you stumble and the economy is a little bad and you're ramping some of the new models and deliveries are down, these guys are going to pounce and dance and say, "This is the end. It's over. Oh my god, deliveries are down a little bit. How are you going to get to 20 million deliveries?" But zoom out and realize that this was a project in someone's garage where they said, "We're going to make electric vehicles a thing." They've built out a national charging network. They've now become one of the largest volume manufacturers in the world, making only electric vehicles. They make millions of cars a year. They made the best selling car in the world last year. And all the way, these bears have been trying to figure out a way to scare people and convince that it's a disaster the whole time, as we witness one of the most transformational growth stories of our time. It's really pretty comical. It's like you see Superman come down from space, fight an alien, punch him in the face, do a backflip, catch a falling building and, put it back up, and then he lands on the ground and he farts. And the bears are going, "Oh my god, did you see that? Superman farted. It smells so bad." I mean, did you see what he did before that? So, like the bears are so convincing sometimes, they just really are great at making a mountain out of a molehill. But ultimately, when you sort of look back at what they predict over time, it's just been failed prediction after failed prediction of Tesla's demise.
We got Sawyer in the house. Sawyer, how are you?
Doing good. What's going on, guys?
Nothing much. How you feeling today?
Pretty shocked by the result, honestly. I wasn't super interested in the delivery report as a whole heading into the report. But when I was refreshing the page and I saw the energy number, I was like, wait a minute. I had to like rub my eyes a little bit because In the Q1 report, they reported it as 4,000 megawatt hours, and then they reported it as 9.4 gigawatt hours. So I was like a little bit confused for a second. I was like, "Holy crap, is that a doubling quarter over quarter? That's nuts to me." And sure enough, it was. And I think this is evidence of the Lathrop ramp going really well. And I think now it's pretty funny. Adam Jonas put out a report today, and one of the comments he said was a lot of clients are reaching out to him today asking for his proprietary Tesla energy model. And it's like all of a sudden people are waking up to Tesla energy when a lot of us in the community have been pounding the table on it for quite a long time. So it should be interesting to see the earnings report in 3 weeks.
Omar, what do you think the earnings are going to look like based on these deliveries coming in much hotter than expected?
It's hard to tell. There's a lot of moving pieces here. There is obviously the fact that production was reduced in the quarter compared to the year ago quarter by 69,000 units. You would expect there to be a working capital benefit there and a drawdown of inventory, which is positive. On the other hand, there were numerous financing and sales incentives offered throughout the quarter. For example, financing on Model Y, financing on Model 3, 0% down or zero interest in China, FSD transfer, and a number of other incentives that will weigh on margin. So I don't really know what to expect. I would expect it to be probably, more or less the same. I would probably expect gross margin somewhere in the range of 15 to 20%.
Yeah, we have a full house today. We have Sawyer, Robert, Farzad, Penny, Yoda, Omar. Who else? Farzad, welcome. How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. What do you think about these earnings? Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, we don't know what the earnings are. The delivery, it came in above the Wall Street expectations by a little bit. You have a situation where you're still down year over year. So if you look at Q2 of last year versus this year, you're still down about 5%. However, the growth versus Q1 is a little bit higher than people were expecting. I think of note is the gap between the production and delivery number in Q2 versus Q1. In Q1, I think they produced, if I remember correctly, something like 60,000 more cars than they delivered. And then in Q2, they delivered 30,000 more cars than they produced. And so you have this sort of flip that's going to help cash flow quite a bit in Q2, which I think Tesla's going to put towards all the stuff that Elon wants to do with AI and whatnot. So, I mean, I think that the stock move to me is like, I don't know why it's up 8%, because it's like they didn't really beat by that much. So I think what it really speaks to is just how poor the sentiment has been around the name. And I think ever since the shareholder meeting where Elon's comp plan was reapproved, I felt like the sentiment has shifted quite a bit to be a lot more positive. And so, any little news like this, where the delivery number is a little bit higher, is going to make the stock react, disproportionately. But then you also have the energy number, which is more than 2 times higher than the previous quarter. But it's tough to know how the revenue is going to flow because the revenue for energy has been quite lumpy in the past, but it's still significantly higher than it's been in previous quarters. But we don't know if it's going to be at the same margin, at lower margin, right? So there's still a lot of questions to be answered. But I think the one thing to look out for, which is I think could be a positive for the story, is that I do think margins are going to go up significantly versus the first quarter because you have better operational leverage. In the second quarter versus the first, you have a Cybertruck ramp that's further along versus the first quarter. You've got theoretically lower COGS per unit, especially related to battery costs from all the different signals we're seeing in the supply chain. Plus, suppliers looking to, the guidance that Elon gave on the call. It's up to people if they want to believe him or not. But there are suppliers out there that potentially have a glut of inventory, or they have plans in the future that they've had to scale back because of people like Ford and GM delaying their plans, which could put additional supply of batteries in the supply chain that wasn't there before, which will force prices lower. And you know that for electric vehicle, the highest percent of the cost is a battery, right? So that should help COGS. We'll see. I mean, I think there could be a positive margin surprise for the second quarter. I don't know if it's like 1%, 2%, whatever that percentage is, but I don't know. So those are the things that are going through my head, and we'll see where it goes. But I do think long term, this number doesn't really it doesn't tell the story that Tesla wants to tell, which is FSD bot, which still has to come to fruition, right? So just another one of those days where it's like, okay, the Wall Street, the market's going to market, and we just got to watch it. You would just watch along and try to figure out what the hell it's doing.
Exactly. Thank you, Farzad. Looks like Penny agrees with you. Penny, how are you doing? How are you feeling today? What do you think about these deliveries numbers and FSD?
I'm doing good. I feel great. I did not expect another big jump after yesterday's jump, and I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the numbers. I'm not in Tesla for the delivery numbers or even for their quarterly results at this point. I think what Farzad said at the end of his statement there, what Tesla is looking to do long term is what I'm invested in. I'm looking really forward to 8.8 and sort of any robotaxi or FSD news. I'm invested in that. I'm also invested in robots and Optimus. Today, what didn't touch really on any of those. So it came as a complete shock to me to wake up and look at my portfolio being meaningfully larger. So that feels great. But I try not to get too emotionally attached to that, because after 2 incredible days, you never know, we could lose most of those gains tomorrow. I don't pay too much attention to the daily price, but when you get to the average like 10% a day for 2 days, that's kind of crazy. It's worth joining Tesla Live and celebrating with y'all a little bit. I'm emotionally attached to being a Tesla shareholder. I'm not going to sell if it's at 300 tomorrow. I wasn't going to sell if it's at 100. The price really doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but it is sort of validation that things are working. I don't know that Wall Street is always the best judge of what's happening at Tesla, but it feels good nonetheless.
Very good. Thank you very much, Penny. All right. So as it says on my pinned tweet, we welcome both bulls and bears in Tesla Live. I encourage people to express themselves, express their opinions, whatever they are, and we can have a respectful discussion. That's the goal of the space. So we have a bear on the board right now, Zero Sum Bond. You may go ahead.
Hey, so just a question for Omar. Obviously, you're bullish on the name. I won't elaborate too much on that. But what do you think is the biggest weakness or biggest issues with Tesla?
Well, I mean, the core auto business is challenged right now. Deliveries are down year over year. Margins are challenged. They have to offer a lot of sales incentives. They seem to really be struggling to introduce a lot of the new models they need to introduce. The ramp up of the new Model 3 and Cybertruck, for example, have been slower than I would like. If they were able to ramp those quicker, then we might actually see delivery growth. So, I think the core automotive business continues to be fairly challenged. I'd like to see it return to posting, record delivery levels.
Right, Alexander.
Hello, guys. Prasad, I was out running when your live stream ended there abruptly, and it messed up my tempo. However, about the delivery numbers, they pushed out a lot of inventory this quarter, and it's great. On my calculations, they only have like 13,500 cars in inventory now, which is really good.
Okay, thank you. Sawyer, I see that you posted also about Rivian's deliveries. Would you like to talk to that for a little bit? We have a lot of Rivian investors in this space as well.
Yeah, we got a quick preview of their delivery numbers. I think it was last week when they had their first investor day. But they produced about 9,600 vehicles and delivered 13,790. That was above expectations as of a few weeks ago, but in line since a lot of people have updated their estimates as of last week. We should get, I think, earnings in about a month, 4 weeks. It's going to be interesting to see what they guide, if they still guide for being gross margin positive heading into Q4. That's what they said they would do in the Q1 earnings report. Obviously, the refreshed R1 and R1T rather. They bring a lot of cost improvements, but will it be enough to get the profitability? We'll have to see.
All right, thank you. Edward.
Yeah, to talk about the bull bear debate, I think the biggest bear out there by far is the media. The mainstream media is just constantly bearish. I don't even follow it really anymore, unless I'm just browsing through certain things, and everything is negative on the mainstream media. And until Tesla turns that around somehow, and I'm not saying to go spend money on advertising and pay these guys to basically be on your side, but to me, I think Tesla will always have that hanging over their head unless the media is actually on Tesla's side at some point.
I mean, the thing is, this is the media. You are in the media right now. We have Sawyer on the board. We have Omar, who is killing it on X. We have Farzad killing it on X and YouTube. We have Penny with his videos. Robert is doing spaces too. This is the media. They're going to be paying X all the ad dollars. You know? Omar, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Elon has received a lot of positive media attention over the years that has brought him to where he is. In more recent years, with him becoming one of the most richest and powerful people on the planet, he's no longer the underdog taking on big oil. Many people in the media now want to paint him as, the Goliath that needs to be challenged. And because of his purchase of X, especially, where, people don't go read the news. So the New York Times goes and invests a bunch of money and time, maybe, risking their life to generate some piece of journalism. Nobody pays for a subscription to read it. Someone just posts on X what it said. And, oh, okay, you just saved me reading the whole article. I read one tweet. It told me what it said. And the media doesn't get paid anything. They do an X subscription instead. They maybe subscribe to their favorite creator who reads the story and then tells them what it says. So this has obviously challenged the media. And Elon and many of his companies has refused to buy advertising. And then, of course, he's also expressing himself politically. Many of the journalists may disagree with his politics. So I think all of this has contributed to recently the media wanting to exaggerate Tesla's issues and not giving them credit where credit's due. So that is, I think, kind of just the reality right now. And yeah, maybe they could buy advertising and pay them off, but I think increasingly people are thinking for themselves. They're going to non-traditional media sources, and we can maybe get our message out in a different way.
Yeah, I think this one I'm actually very interested in, if I can throw my 2 cents, Yaman, if that's okay.
I was just about to go to you.
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting about this whole thing is that the reason why this sort of independent media around Tesla exists is exactly because the mainstream media is very bad at covering Tesla. And so this all started with Rob Maurer, Galley, Dave Lee, Stephen Mark Ryan, Omar, James Stevenson, Sawyer, right? There's like all these guys that a lot of people have gravitated towards for the last 6-8 years because mainstream media was so bad at describing what was going on, right? And it's all a function of this old mechanism that mainstream media has, which works, FYI, which works. I see it working in my own content as much as I hate to admit it. I see it working in my own content. Whereas if you know how to make a very clickable piece of content, people are going to gravitate towards it. And usually what quote unquote sells better than the other stuff is something that's skewed negative to positive. And when you have such a expensive keyword like Elon Musk or Tesla, meaning that there's going to be a lot of people clicking on that thing, which is going to allow mainstream media companies to show ads against those keywords. You now have a forcing function, an incentive for media to run negative stories versus positive stories, and it's compounded even further when the person that leads that company is not willing to spend ad dollars with you, which could incentivize you to not run those stories, right? So it's just this weird mechanism that totally exists. It's 100% real, and I think Omar's point of the broader public becoming wiser to it is one that, you know, I've personally held that view for a while. I've been called naive for it. I'm sure Omar's been called naive for it. I'm sure everybody on this panel who thinks that way has been called naive for it. But I really do think the broader population is a lot smarter than mainstream media gives them credit for. It's just they're silent. And the reason why everyone on this panel that creates, let's say, content or journalism around Tesla performs so well is because there's interest and there's a hunger for that interest, right? So yeah, man, the reason why this space is so successful in independent media is because mainstream media sucks at covering it. Literally, they have a gap.
Thank you, Farzad. Robert, would you like to throw in your 2 cents?
Good day, entertaining for us longs. We don't care about short-term moves. We're in for a decade, and but you have to get to the decade, and so this is positive.
Thank you.
Traveling around America lately, I'm seeing a lot of new Teslas, and I'm not seeing the same number of other new cars. So, anecdotal.
Thank you. Omar?
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly that I totally agree with Farzad. I was a software engineer. I never imagined getting into covering anything, but the mainstream media and the shorts were just misrepresenting the situation so badly that I think that's why a lot of people got in and said, hey, let me just start covering this and explain what I actually see happening here. And it's funny when you look at like what the media is covering, like, the media will probably write a story about, who's what's Elon doing in his personal life, who's he dating, whatever. And you're never going to see a story like Tesla FSD 1242 rolls out. Here's what people say. The things that really actually are going to have the most impact on the future of the world. Okay, they're building a new Megapack factory. They're rolling out a new FSD update. You're going to see zero coverage of that from the mainstream media. But you're going to get in-depth, in-detail coverage from places like Sawyer's page and places like Farzad's channel. And you can just get subject matter expertise that the mainstream media can't even dream of. And that is why smart people are coming to places like X.
And I think that dynamic too, if you follow the bear side or if you follow Tesla Q, it's I still find so many people have a tough time wrapping their head around that dynamic, that their only conclusion is the only reason why these guys exist is because Elon is paying them. The only reason these guys can actually sit down and do this, there's no way they would do this on their own volition. Like, nobody is this psychotic to talk about Tesla constantly or whatever. But like, what's being missed entirely is this dynamic, is that like this group plus so many others out there that follow, either because we are interested in the technology, we're interested in the wider industry trends, because we're interested in the leader, we're interested in the investing thesis, right? There's so many different variables to follow the story. It's hard to comprehend that from the outside looking in when you don't understand that dynamic, that there's an obvious gap in information, quality of information as it pertains to this space, that's going to really give birth to a brand new industry in the next 10, 20 years of legitimate products that are AI based versus services that are AI based. And that's what Tesla is doing right now, right? With the cars and the bots and everything like that. And so that's what I find really, really interesting, is that, yeah, and that's the dynamic. And it's like, okay, cool. So like the conclusion, like there's no way these guys are talking about this because on their own volition. It's like there must be something else, and just there isn't. That doesn't exist. That's just funny to see. It's funny to see.
Barzad, how does this compare with the water coolers internally at Tesla or at lunch times? Do we technically have more chatter and news compared to the internal staff?
Uh, Meaning, help me understand that question a little bit better.
Yeah, do you think the conversation here around FSD is actually more intense than, let's say,
Yes.
what the factory workers talk about at their breaks?
Yeah, I think on the whole, I think the sort of the outside space, like the average water cooler conversation, is you'll be surprised how much of it is based on the content that's generated from outside of the company. So, like, when I used to work there, I mean, you had people that followed Dave Lee, you had people that followed Stephen Marcron, you have people that followed Galley, you have people that followed Rob and Sawyer and Omar, and they're like, dude, did you see this? Right? And it's like a lot of it is driven by their passion in the company, because they're like, oh my God, there's somebody out there that gets it. Like, we see it every day. We can't go to CNBC, CNN, NBC, Fox, Jalopnik, whatever, name your media source. They don't get it, but these guys get it, right? And there was so much excitement. I've been out of the company now for close to 3 years, right? So it's like I'm losing a little bit more of that like close knit thing that I had with the people there. I still have friends that work there. I talk to them quite often. So I couldn't tell you what the water cooler conversations are now, but I wouldn't be surprised if that dynamic exists.
Alex, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's a good day. Good delivery
Feeling?
numbers. It's always a
Yeah,
good day with good delivery numbers.
yeah. Yeah, we've been talking about it, and Omar, Elon has been responding to you and Stephen Ryan as well about Optimus being an even bigger deal here. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think they just have a pretty good handle on FSD. If you take a look, it's now normal for it to drive an hour or so completely hands-free. So I think they've really demonstrated that this is possible. Even on hardware 3, it's doing this well. When we think about really the AI 5 chip that's going to go into Optimus that has 40 times more compute than hardware 3, it's really going to get crazy when we train these larger and larger models. Especially, he responded to Sawyer's tweet the other day talking about a model with a 5 times higher parameter count. When you have a 5 times higher parameter count, that means it's a bigger neural network. There's more weights and biases. It has way more connections where the weights can be adjusted to sort of train the model. It can learn much more complex behaviors. So really, we haven't seen anything yet in terms of, I think, what these models are going to do. And if you can do it in the cars, I think it's going to work in the humanoid robots as well. And you're really going to have a game-changing product here where for the first time, you're able to build a humanoid robot that has a brain that is, comparable on some level to a human brain. If you can make a piece of software that can drive a car, well then, why can't you automate pretty much any other task a human can do? I think they have a pretty good shot at actually doing it. And to me right now, it looks like they got the best shot out of any other company on earth.
Okay, great. We're gonna get the question from or point from Simon, and then we're gonna talk some around 8.8, and also Elon following Travis. Simon, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm excited that we actually are one of those folks who took delivery in June. Just took delivery of our second Model Y on Friday. My question, really, Omar or maybe Sawyer. So the delivery process between my car 2 years ago and this one, the pickup was amazing. But one thing I was really shocked with was not only did they not discuss FSD in the free trial, but the tech that came and supported my wife and I didn't even know why it was grayed out on the settings screen when I specifically asked him about it. And of course, that was the camera calibration that has to happen first. But there was a real big kind of discussion about a month ago with Elon telling everyone, hey, with 12.3, I want everyone doing a test drive and all that kind of thing. And logistically, that could be a challenge. But I'm curious if you guys have heard or seen anything of the like, or if maybe you think they pushed pause on that until 12.4 or beyond.
So I believe when Elon gave that order to start giving everyone test drives with FST, that was the end of March. That was heading into the end of Q1 deliveries. And then 2, 3 weeks later is when all the tons of layoffs started happening, and various service centers and stores started losing sales reps as a result. And so certain stores got sort of overworked, and other employees had to pick up what some other employees were working on. And I think that's why some people have gotten a less than desirable delivery experience. But that's also maybe why they're not doing as many FSD test drives as we thought they would, just because they might just be too much right now. I don't really know if that's still like the rule of what they're supposed to be doing, but I haven't heard much on that front in a while. I don't know if you've heard anything, Omar.
Yeah, I mean, do you have FSD already?
I do on mine, and so we turned the trial on my wife's car. In fact, I'm really hoping with what you've been saying with 12.4.2, we got a road trip to Florida coming up here in 2 weeks. I would love for it to roll out to the fleet so that we can both be, tag teaming on FSD. But I knew enough about it to be able to get her squared away. I was just really surprised that when I asked, hey, auto steer and beta FSD isn't available. It was grayed out when he was going through that. He didn't even know why. Now, beyond that, every other part of the delivery was 10 times better than my delivery was 2 years ago. So I enjoyed it, but I was disappointed thinking that FSD was going to be getting more hype from the delivery teams.
Yeah, I think sort of as Sawyer said, it's probably like a resource issue. And especially if it's somebody who, has FSD already, then on their account, then probably not something we really need to be, spending time doing is demoing it. I don't know, how widespread it is, but these delivery employees and service employees aren't always the most knowledgeable about everything that's going on with the software in the company. Like, it's pretty common that someone who comes to this space or is on X might have a better knowledge of things than the actual Tesla employee doing deliveries. I mean, it's not really rocket science what they do. You just got to hire somebody to give people their cars, right? So maybe that is something that could be improved, but I think the most important thing is just getting the cars delivered. What I would really recommend is actually building it into the software. And you've actually seen them start to do this where it'll say, hey, just, pull down on the stock to activate FSD. Click here to watch a video. We'll show you how to use autopilot. That, I think, is actually the way forward and something you can't mess up rather than trying to give, millions and millions of demos.
Just a quick, anecdotal story. Heading into the end of Q2, I live in New England, and I heard that the Dedham, Massachusetts Tesla store on a single day this past weekend delivered 184 cars. And if anyone knows that store, it's a really small store, and there's not a ton of employees. And imagine trying to give 184 FSD test drives in a single day. You just logistically, you just can't do it, right? So I think that's partly why they haven't been doing it. They just physically can't give that many test rides.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. Just a quick note, this space is only possible because of my patrons. Without my patrons, this space is not possible. You may join my Patreon. The link is in below the space in a reply. Or what you can do is, if you can't join Patreon, which I understand, what you can do is reply to the tweet at the top. If you reply to the tweet at the top, that brings visibility to it, which brings ad revenue. If everyone in the space replied to the tweet at the top, the ad revenue alone would make this space financially viable. All right, thank you. Ellie, go ahead.
Thank you. So I delivered 7 cars today, and it was a crazy day. So whatever Sawyer just said, that's crazy. Unfortunately, that's not a Tesla car. I just wanted to say something about BYD when you guys talked about it like a few minutes ago, like 20 minutes ago. I drove BYD. I don't know if you guys drove any BYD car. The car is so not impressive. It's very simple. It's very bad. Like when you ride a Tesla, everything's so tuned in. It's so good, so perfect almost. And BYD, I mean, they sell a lot of their cars to fleet operators. So they push their car very aggressively in very low price. And I just need you guys to know the car is not impressive. Any Chinese car I drove and I walk for one, it's just nothing compared to Tesla. I just really need you to know that.
Thank you, Ellie, and thank you very much for supporting this space through Patreon. And also, I want to mention, yesterday I asked people, who is your favorite space speaker? And somebody mentioned that your kindness, and kind of highlighted that in addition to obviously Omar being the GOAT and everybody else on the speaker board today. Thank you very much for your contributions. I want to recognize it with everybody in this space right now. All right, let's talk some 8.8. All right. So Elon recently followed Travis, the founder of Uber. Omar, we tried to talk about yesterday. Let's start with Robert. Robert, what do you think about that?
It's huge. Travis and Garrett started Uber right in front of me, and I've interviewed Travis in front of Stanford Business School. He's an amazing thinker on this topic. If he was to join Tesla, it would be a real big deal.
Okay, perfect. Omar, what do you think about Elon following Travis? There's some speculation going around about maybe hiring Travis or for robotaxi service. Do you agree with those speculations?
Well, I mean, I hope so. I think Travis is a legend, but it does seem like kind of wishful thinking. I would be very surprised to see it actually happen. On the other hand, Elon said at the shareholder meeting, look, we want to build a business that's kind of like Airbnb and Uber. And I think he is seeking outside advice and counsel on how to do this. They recently, within the last year, I believe, added the founder of Airbnb to the board. He's sitting on the board of Tesla. That's probably some useful expertise to have as we're building a sort of car sharing marketplace. I think Travis obviously was controversial. He was eventually pushed out of Uber, but he is single-handedly, I think, responsible for just ramming ride sharing down the world's throat. The regulation in many cases did not allow ride sharing. He made them change the regulation. He made it possible. You needed a founder like him. And I mean, to this day, few people understand ride sharing like this guy, right? Starting Uber from nothing, figuring out the viral marketing and growth hacks to get it to expand. They would do things like, put certain cars in certain areas so that people got low wait times and stuff like that. Um, you know, any sort of executive or advisory capacity he could come in as, obviously, we would love to have him. But as I said, probably kind of wishful thinking. Although, it is kind of curious that Travis hasn't posted anything for years. But then Elon, just followed him all of a sudden. And I think someone had a really good quote from Travis, but I'll let you go to someone else while I pull it up.
Okay. Let's go to Sierra. Sierra, how are you doing? How are you feeling today? And do you have anything to add on 8.8, Elon following Travis, robotaxi service, anything of that sort?
Hey, yeah, I actually did want to comment on Elon following Travis. So in 2016, Travis actually bought Auto, which was a fully autonomous commercial trucking company founded by my former boss, Anthony Lewandowski, for $600 million. And they ended up running into a lawsuit. You can read up on it. My point is that Travis has shown immense interest in autonomous vehicle software in the past. And I think that it's worth noting that there might be interest outside of, I think that it's worth noting that there might be interest outside of it being an internal relationship with the company. Perhaps maybe he'll license the software in some way.
Interesting. Hey, Sierra, while I have you on the board, who is your favorite former boss?
Oh, my favorite former boss, definitely Elon, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of FUD out there. Actually, let's kind of just touch on that for a second. There's a lot of FUD out there that Elon's very difficult to work for, what have you. Can you speak to that a little bit? I know you worked with quite a few people who worked with Elon directly.
Thing to push your employees to do things that you're not willing to do yourself. But Elon is in the trenches, putting in more hours or as many hours as the highest paid executives at all of his companies. And it's really inspirational. Everyone at all of his companies that I've had the pleasure of interacting with or working with directly is extremely mission driven. And the passion is just unparalleled inside those walls. And it bleeds from him.
Okay, very good. And would you recommend people work for XAI?
Absolutely. I think that anyone who is willing and able should contribute to the AI revolution in whatever way they're able to. And I can't think of any better place to do it than under Elon's guidance and with that team.
Perfect. Omar.
So I got the quote pulled up. This is from John's EV newsletter. Go subscribe to that. I commented the link in the comments to this space. So this is a comment that Travis Kalanick made in 2016 when he was the CEO of Uber. He said, "It starts with understanding that the world is going to go self-driving and autonomous. So if that's happening, what would happen if we weren't a part of that future? If we weren't a part of the autonomy thing? Then the future passes us by, basically, in a very expeditious and efficient way. If we're not tied for first, then the person who is in first, or the entity that is in first, then rolls out a ride sharing network that is far cheaper or higher quality than Uber's. Then Uber is no longer a thing." So this is 8 years ago. This is what the CEO of Uber said. And I think he knows a thing or two about Uber. Now, if you look at the design for Tesla's ride sharing app that they've showed off, they show it going beyond an Uber, not just allowing you to call a car, but control it, control the temperature, control the music, control the settings in the car, offer a deeper level of integration than Uber can have. So I think that is really what they're shooting for. Not just cheaper, not just more efficient, but actually better than an Uber, something that you actually want to take instead of an Uber, because you're going to have your profile synced, all your settings synced. You can even give it preferences on how you want it to drive. And that's all just going to carry over when you call a cyber cab.
Okay, good. Hey, Penny, you have connections at XAI too. Would you like to talk to the culture over there for a little bit before I go to Machine and get his thoughts on Elon's recent comments and 8.8?
Well, my XAI connections are sort of surface level, and I don't feel really super qualified to talk to the culture. I'll say that the people that work there are extremely qualified, extremely driven, and I think the results speak for themselves. I'm really looking forward to Grok 2.0, which Elon announced comes out in August. But like I think Sierra said it all, right? The man leads by example, and he builds the things that everyone else sort of wished that they were building or want to be built, but they were either too afraid or intimidated or something like that. I've always been driven to support and follow Elon because of that, right? He's an inspiration, and when I see the possibility of Optimus, when I see the possibility of Robotaxi, he was working on those things. He started those projects before people thought they were possible. And if it weren't for his drive, then who knows how many decades additionally we might wait to see some of these things before they manifest themselves without Elon. So definitely, I think the fact that all of the most qualified engineers coming out of school for the past decade have wanted to join one Elon company or another is probably the main point when it comes to culture.
Thank you, Penny. Okay, machine. So we have quite a few developments around Tesla FSD and robotaxi potential in recent days. We have the 88 event coming up soon. Elon has been replying to folks about FSD, robotaxi, autonomy, Optimus being a much bigger potential than what we're seeing in today's price action. Elon following Travis. People speculating maybe Travis will be the head of robotaxi service. Who knows? What do you think about all this? Especially, maybe you can give us a bit of a technical overview of the 5x improvement as well.
I think the tweets from about a month ago, where Elon goes over the significant improvements in miles per intervention in V12.4 and 12.5, I think we're really bullish at the time, even though there were some caveats assigned to it. Still getting something probably 10x to 20x improvement is dramatic. There's no debating that. If you take the current software that Omar, fawns over daily, repeatedly, literally every day, never stopping, and 20x it, I think his brain might explode. And I don't know what we're going to do. What are you going to do with the space when his brain's gone because at 20x? So I think that's super positive. And if you also consider the time frame at which this has happened is not very long, that's very positive. It's optimistic. I will say the developments around, you still have to keep a frame of reference of where we need to go for true robotaxi. And true robotaxi is going to need something on the order of at least 100,000 miles per critical disengagement. And so even if Tesla did 10x or 20x from the 100 or so miles per intervention or 200, all this is fuzzy math, they're ending up somewhere, let's say 2,000 miles per critical intervention, which is an astounding jump. But you're still maybe 50x away from true robotaxis. So there's still a long way to go. And that's why we see things which I've expected the whole time, and it's been my main concern, is that the biggest predictor of model performance over time is size. Size matters. Okay, it can't be too skinny of a neural net. The girth has to be substantial, and those neural nets penetrate the best. And we see that when Elon Musk had neural net envy, and he told the team, make this thing 5x, go buy a pump and pump this thing up 5x the parameters. And we see that's part of, it's still not clear on this terminology if he's referring to 12.5, because he was talking about 12.4 and then saying the next one. So I presume that's 12.5. 5xing the parameters allows a lot more capacity to learn nuanced, sparse, stochastic details. So I think this is the evolution that Tesla's going to keep on going. They're going to keep making models bigger, and at the same time fighting by trying to compress them and make them as efficient as possible to run on the inference chips. But that's going to be kind of the limiting factor, in my opinion, is that they're going to make these models. They're going to make in the next few years a model that is big enough to be robotaxi competent. The question is, will they be able to fit it onto one of these inference chips?
Great, thank you very much. Omar.
So I think that the models will continue to get larger. You probably want to have the largest model that you can fit in your compute budget. The compute is going to increase. I think the model sizes will also increase over time. That will allow them to, sort of learn more complex behavior. But at the same time, you're going to have to continue to train models that run on a variety of hardware. You're going to have to train hardware 3 specific models, hardware 4 specific models. To the extent that you don't make a retrofit available, you'll have to have either a quantized version, and a quantized version can capture a lot of the complexities of the larger model in a sort of smaller package that's easier to inference. Another technique that I could potentially see them using in the future is, with LLMs, you do see smaller quantized versions of the model that actually match the performance of the larger model within specific domains. So it is possible that they could possibly, for example, let's say there's a vehicle that's going to be a hardware 3 vehicle that's going to be used in, Seattle as a robotaxi. It's possible they could train some type of model to specific markets that's quantized and has the performance of a larger model, but only kind of has the sort of parts it isn't using. So I think the model sizes will continue to get larger, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to support the old hardware. Unless, of course, they say, hey, let's just not support this old hardware and let's just make an upgrade available, maybe even, give people a discount or a free upgrade or something. That I think is fine. Honestly, I don't really care if they make hardware 3 autonomous yet. I think obviously eventually you want to have as many cars perform as well as they possibly can. But if they can even get to autonomous on hardware 6, I'll take that, right? And, I think it's just kind of funny, Machine is always saying, oh my God, they got so far to go. They got so far to go. I mean, it's like one of these Falcon rockets has taken off and the engine's starting to light up, and Machine's going, well, space is all the way up there. Look, it's still pretty much on the ground, right? And as it goes up, he says, yeah, it looks impressive. It looks like a lot of fire, but space is still way up there. It's still closer to us than space. But the rocket's off, it's lit. We can see which direction it's going, and it's not back down to Earth until, the boosters have to land, of course. So, I mean, again, even today, like this conversation always comes up when Elon talks about the next generation models or the next generation hardware. People proclaiming doom for hardware 3 for years and years. But still today, the 1142 that's about to go out to everybody, the latest state of the art model is only a hardware 3 model. And we haven't even started to scratch the surface of hardware 4, let alone hardware 5. I mean, absolutely use the increased power of hardware 4 and hardware 5 and run bigger models. But just because you're doing that doesn't mean that you can't support older vehicles as well.
Yoda.
Yeah, it's great to have the debate and the discussion going. But what's worth noting is that it sounds like Elon and the team has figured out the size of the model to solve autonomy. And that's actually, I think, the bigger underlying news is that they could see it. So yeah, all great discussions. And then kind of back to Travis, I think Tesla is going through a transition from being a product selling company into a services selling company. And Travis, whether it's a consulting role or what have you, is much needed expertise. I couldn't think of a person perhaps at Tesla um, who has that sort of experience. So that could be a gap that Elon is looking to fill. And I think a percentage of royalty on all robo taxi revenue up to say 2030 might be incentive enough.
Machine.
I think I don't know why Omar took my whole conversation and tried to make it pessimistic, because I was pretty optimistic about the developments of FSD. He's just obsessed, like everyone else, with hardware 3, trying to force hardware 3 down our throats, mine included. And I'm more amused than not anything about hardware, the focus on hardware 3, that it might or might not be capable of robotaxis, because in the big picture, who cares? This is not the main source of robotaxi revenue in the future. It's going to be the robotaxi specific vehicle, which is going to be on hardware 5. So that should be the focus from an investment standpoint for most people. I just get the kick out of it because, everyone was told they're going to instantaneously turn on their car and it's going to be a robotaxi. And so many people are still clinging on to that thought. I mean, so much so that, Omar included, everyone is so bullish on FSD and they don't want to talk about Optimus and Optimus becoming a bigger thing because they're obsessed with FSD and making their little YouTube videos talking about their wife test. And they don't want to have their wife test with Optimus, which is going to be, when does Optimus have better sex with your wife than you? That's what you need to think about.
Oh my gosh. Okay, just we have some new people in this space today. Obviously, it's a big space. A lot of people are excited about the stock price action. I just want to give everyone an overview of Machine. Machine has been very good with predictions. He has very colorful language, but that doesn't take away from his accuracy. So be patient with him. It's an acquired taste. Omar?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with Machine that this sort of age-old debate about can hardware 3 do it is kind of irrelevant. It becomes more irrelevant every quarter, right? Like you think about 2019, for example, or I think 2020 they delivered like 500,000 cars, right, for the entire year. So they delivered 500,000 hardware 3 cars. We're now delivering 500,000 hardware 4 cars every quarter, right? So as time goes on, those hardware 3 cars look smaller and smaller by comparison. So it really is the cherry on the top of the autonomy sundae. If you can't do it, then give them a coupon, for free FSD or something. Give them $10,000 back. If you've really solved autonomy with hardware 5 or hardware 6, it's really kind of irrelevant. So I agree. It's the cherry on top. It's really kind of irrelevant given how much time we discuss. But at the same time, I mean, this is like the little hardware that could. I mean, this thing just keeps chugging. As much as people have said, this thing just sucks. There's no way it can do autonomy. Look at it. Driving from Palo Alto to San Francisco, through all the craziness of San Francisco, no interventions. It's already far past the point of usefulness. And there isn't really as much of a reason to believe as you'd think that it can't be driverless. I mean, if it can drive for hours without intervention today consistently, why can't it do it every time? I think there's still a lot of room for hardware 3 to improve. And I think that Tesla's philosophy is not, will it get to robotaxi or won't it? It's, how can we make every car in our fleet as safe and as capable as possible? And that's why they're going to continue supporting these cars, either through most likely continuing to train hardware 3 capable models, or if they can't do that, by retrofitting the computers, which are designed to be easily swapped in and out.
Machine.
Omar has difficulty with numbers and statistics, and I love how he flip-flops between robotaxi and it drove one time between Palo Alto and San Francisco. He probably just went on El Camino, which has a stoplight every 30 seconds, and he's congratulating himself that the thing didn't hit anything. It's like 30 miles. No disengagements per 30 miles. Now you're going to have to do that 1,000 times without a disengagement, and then you're at robotaxi. So yes, it's not there yet. Maybe it will get there in hardware 3. I've given my very intelligent, the best reasons that anyone's ever given why I don't think it will. But that's fine. You can disagree with my smartness. That's fine. I just want to say I see all these, it's like on a popular day, Yaman, all these fancy, high following accounts come join your Twitter spaces, but they're never here on the low days. I'm here on the low days too. These charlatans come in and they just give little claps to Omar. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I
mean,
encourage people to join daily to the space. We go deep into FSD Optimus technology. We discuss a lot of topics, and more the merrier. Obviously, like today, for example, we have Matt Smith, and I would like him to kind of give us an overview of his take on Tesla Energy, which grew triple digits quarter over quarter. and now it seems the Lathrop factory has ramped close to capacity, and I wonder what he thinks is going to happen next. Matt, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Yaman. Happy to be a part-time charlatan coming in and wrecking your spaces when things are good. But yeah, I mean that was the very clear surprise was looking at that production and delivery report. I mean, my first thought was just looking at the deliveries and what a surprise that was, and then it's like, oh, you got to read the first paragraph where it says 9.4 gigawatt hours of energy storage. I mean, that was such a shocking number. I mean, we've been tracking the Lathrop factory. I don't know if you guys have remember Bradford actually parked out at the Lathrop factory for like the better part of 2 weeks, just trying to get an idea of the actual run rate. And the factory has ramped a lot slower than we were expecting. So for that reason, and the kind of continuous updates that we're getting from there as much as we can, it seemed like maybe we'd start tracking towards 40 gigawatt hours by the end of this year. It was kind of my expectation. And because there's also kind of delays between when something is manufactured versus when it's deployed, which is the key term that Tesla uses in this report, versus when the revenue is actually recognized. My expectation was that this was going to take a while before the kind of ramp up in Lathrop translated into a ramp up of actual reported revenue. But seeing this huge spike, that was very surprising. So it does suggest that Lathrop is at or near capacity and probably has been for some time now. And the other possible alternative is that there's this could be something of a one-time spike. If, for example, there was a bit of a buildup in inventory in Q1 and some of it got deployed in Q2, like an inordinate a number of large projects got deployed in Q2, for example. Maybe they're not actually at the 10 gigawatt hour quarterly run rate yet, which is Lathrop's capacity. So that still seems like a reasonable possibility, but even so, there's no way to deny that there's like a very meaningful step change in Lathrop's capacity here. And this is a very important because the gross margins on energy are already higher than on the auto side of the business. And the growth rate is like drastically higher. We're down year over year on deliveries on revenue on the auto business, and we're up over 100% quarter over quarter, let alone year over year on these deliveries. Now, I do want to caution everyone that this isn't all going to translate to 100% plus revenue growth quarter over quarter, because there is a pretty meaningful lag in revenue recognition, like I was saying earlier. And then also the other point, which I just noticed today, is the price, the publicly listed price for megapacks on the Tesla website is down to all-time low levels. So this used to be a product that was around $450, $500 per kilowatt hour. They kind of lowered that, then raised it back up over the years. Now it's at around $265, I think it was, per kilowatt hour, which is super cheap. So that's a pretty big change, and it was kind of interesting to see Tesla actually posting that on their website again, because they had taken it down for a while. So that was certainly kind of interesting, and that can potentially create some margin pressure and or just reduce the growth rate of the revenue. So said another way, the growth rate in deployments, if prices are falling, is going to outstrip the growth rate in revenue. So requires a bit of nuance, I think, but overall, it's hard to count this as anything other than a massive win for Tesla Energy.
Thank you, Matt. Sawyer.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for calling out that price decline. Quick question. Do you think, because I know on the previous Megapack configurator page, it allowed you to select whether you wanted to include installation or not. They seem to have taken that off. Do you think the installation is now included in the price, or have they just gotten rid of that?
I assume they just got rid of it. I mean, if they were including that in the price and it was still that cheap, that'd be like pretty wild. I think the indicator, these are multi-tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars potentially projects. So the configurator is kind of nice for being able to have an idea of pricing, but all these things ultimately get kind of renegotiated, and they're done on contracts that are going to take into account the installation costs and that sort of thing. And also, it's important to keep in mind their installation costs are potentially going to vary quite a bit depending on what needs to be hooked up and who's taking what responsibility for some of the installation and interconnecting with the rest of your project or your substation or your your factory, whatever it is that you're deploying these to, that the factory or the installation costs could vary a bit. So I think it was probably just a cleaner idea for Tesla to strip out the installation costs and just focus on the product. And then, of course, if you're placing an order for like $100 million of megapacks, Tesla's going to give you a call. You'll work out whether you want Tesla to do the installation and kind of manage it. But in my mind, it's just the most prudent thing to kind of take that out.
Thank you, Matt. Omar, back to you. So Tesla Energy is killing it. I mean, they have triple-digit quarter-to-quarter growth. No one expected this. No analyst has any of these achievements in their financial models. Gross margins are higher than Tesla automotive margins, and I believe Tesla Energy growth margins will increase quarter-to-quarter quite a bit this quarter as well. Why is Wall Street not pricing in Tesla Energy, do you think? Why are they missing this opportunity?
Well, I don't think people have really wrapped their head around what's going to be happening to the power market long term. We're just starting to see the first signs of it. Long story short, there's huge new demand use cases for electricity emerging. Things that used to be fossil fuel, for example, many people used to heat their homes with natural gas. Slowly, people are moving to heat pumps. That's moving to electricity. Fossil fuel gasoline used to be used to power cars. Now a lot of people are getting EVs. And you look at the emergence of these AI data centers. I mean, a lot of people really believe the key to creating AGI is just to sort of scale up training massively. And if that's true, then we're going to need a lot of new data centers, not only to train the AI, but also in many cases to serve that AI to customers over the internet. So, what does it all add up to? A huge build out in power demand. And what's the cheapest way to build out power? Renewables plus megapack. So this is really, I think, a long-term secular trend. Now, what share of that market does Tesla have when BYD and CATL and others are also in the energy storage market? Well, I think as with the vehicle business, Tesla differentiates themselves with some really powerful software. So much better to manage a ton of megapacks with Tesla software than others. Things like Auto Bidder, it's kind of like the FSD of Megapack, where you can autonomously monetize that Megapack. Just kind of set it and forget it, and it's making money for you. It's making trades, and you're hopefully saving money. So I think they've got a good set of differentiated products. I think they've got a great sort of software ecosystem. I think they're ramping up production. I mean, it's pretty clear that the world just needs a ton of batteries, and I think the companies that are able to supply those packs for them are going to do well in recent years. I would expect the data center side of the business to grow a lot, as well as just the massive build out of solar and wind. I think batteries pair really well with them, especially as Matt pointed out, as prices are falling. Not so good for Tesla because they don't, they're not able to charge as much. But you also have costs falling with the commodities and cells falling in price. And ultimately, when you have these mega packs getting cheaper and energy storage getting cheaper, it makes the overall renewable plus battery pack more competitive. And that's really exciting. I mean, you look at electric generation capacities, it's like 90% of new capacity additions are renewable. So it's pretty dramatic.
Yoda, and then I have a question for Matt.
Yeah, I think a good way to summarize is to just state what Elon mentioned, that in terms of AI, it's going to run out of compute and we're over that hump. And then after that, it's going to be transformers and electricity. And so I think Tesla Energy is going to play a really important role going forward to solve efficient compute for AI workloads.
Thank you. So, Matt, obviously the energy market can be complicated to understand sometimes, and you do a good job of putting it into simple English for people. What would you tell retail investors to kind of keep an eye on when it comes to Tesla Energy, when it comes to understanding virtual power plants, grid services, kind of the opportunity around Tesla Energy? How would you kind of describe it to people who are just starting to follow the energy market?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably wax poetic for about an hour going down each of those different rabbit holes, but I'll try to keep it a little bit more high level than that. The thing to maybe keep in mind is like, I think a lot of us had in mind that, the kind of virtual power plants and like home energy, distributed energy resources kind of play was where Tesla might make a lot of their money. And in fact, this is what Elon was talking about. I don't know, 6 years ago, when he was talking about Tesla Energy, he talked about Tesla being a giant distributed global utility, which really implies that, like, okay, you're at home, you'll have a power wall, and eventually, as more and more of your neighbors have a power wall, you'll kind of aggregate those resources together and kind of sell them into the market and get some ancillary services revenue that you can split with your customers and with Tesla. That was kind of the path Tesla appeared to be following. What's happened, I think, is residential solar build out has really stalled for Tesla in particular, but in the last couple of years, in California in particular, with net metering reform, like solar has stopped a bit, which makes it makes very little sense to install a battery without solar or some other sort of on-source generation if you're a residential customer. So I still think that that's going to be a trend that plays out in the very long term. But for right now, for the next several years at least, it seems like all the action is going to be on the very large scale, mega pack side of the business, where you're all the challenges that Omar was talking about. Of you've got a huge amount of electrification of the grid coming on. You've got retirement of coal plants, which is kind of the base load generation that's always there, and then all the new generation that's being added is just like solar and wind, and it is not by a small margin either. I was trying to, I'll try to pull this study and make a tweet and put it in the nest in a minute here. But essentially, what you're doing is increasing the volatility of both demand and supply in the grid, which is kind of a wild thing. And you're doing this in an industry which is not built to move fast at all. Electric load growth over the last, basically since post World War II has been around 0.5% per year. So, our use of electricity has been growing, but we've been finding ways to be more energy efficient. So it's netted out to be around 0.5% a year. That's more like 2, 3, 4% per year going forward by most estimates. And it's with these sources that are highly interruptible. That's going to create more volatile like pricing and therefore greater swings in prices and a greater need for storage to kind of balance that out. So I think the opportunity here for Tesla is like absolutely massive on that side of the business, just because it's such a large problem.
Yeah, and we have a question for you in YouTube live chat as well. According to your forecast, what's Tesla Energy 2024 and 2025 EPS impact? And are you revising your forecast after today's results? Matt?
Oops, sorry, I forgot to unmute. I'm definitely revising my forecast. I was actually kind of looking at it before I jumped on here. So I think pricing is probably going to come down from where I had it. Volumes are definitely going to uptick from where I had it. I can just take. Let's see. I'll have to do this a bit manually, but if you bear with me 1 second, I can get you an answer. Maybe go to someone else for a second, and I can get back to you with that answer.
Okay, that's fine. Machine, how about you? Do you think Tesla Energy forecasts are going to be coming up after today? Gross margins are higher than automotive. Growth rate is higher than automotive. Do you think Tesla Energy is being priced into the stock? Is that why we're up 10% today?
I think today is more about shorts closing positions, and plus a little bit of demand for the stock. That's why you usually have these instantaneous behaviors, especially in the first few hours of positions being closed, short positions being closed, and then it kind of steadies out the rest of the day. I think Tesla Energy was a huge surprise, and that's going to provide additional earnings on the bottom line. I know it's all spread out, but still, when you deliver that much for this quarter, I think no doubt revenues and gross margins will be higher. But that's the one time sort of element for Q2 versus looking forward for the next year. What are those gross margins going to be? And I think Matt brings up a bunch of good points, and I haven't modeled it out, but it seems like there's much more drastic price cuts than we had probably expected. Now, with that, the cell purchase of the iron phosphate cells from China, those costs have gone down as well. Probably not as much. So I believe your COGS are going down for sure. And the ASPs are probably going down more. So my guess is that in the future, and these contracts that are being purchased today may not be seen until 2025, but I would estimate that the gross margins are going to go down a bit next year. And so I don't know if anyone's forecasting that out that much. We talked about this before. We believe energy is probably worth maybe 100 billion for Tesla.
Are you serious? Even after today, you're not increasing that number? You think it's only $100 billion? It's a business that's growing triple digits. Gross margins are higher than automotive and is likely to increase quarter over quarter substantially. And you think it's only $100 billion?
Well, we can go back. I mean, you agreed with me at the time. So we can go back and put down the numbers again and we can assume faster growth, but lower gross margins than before, and see where that turns out. I mean, the big thing with energy is that it's going to grow faster and will allow for a higher multiple. But at the same time, the numbers themselves are simply lower than automotive in terms of price per gigawatt hour. They're not selling as many gigawatt hours as they are batteries in cars. So just simply the amount of revenue and profit they're generating from it is like 0.1 dollars, 10 cents per quarter for energy, and that will go up. Certainly, maybe you'll get 20 cents this quarter, and that is certainly significant. But I don't know what you can value out, how much what that's going to look like in 2025. Like, I don't know if we're hitting 50 cents a quarter.
Well, let's hear what Matt has for his numbers, EPS numbers. Matt, what do you think?
So yeah, I was just doing some checking between what I had in the model, and this is just for 2024, and with the kind of revisions, taking all that stuff into account, lower ASP, higher volumes, lower gross margin, putting that all together, I'm getting an increase in 24, so including Q1, or I guess it's really just for the latest for the next 3 quarters. An increase in earnings, my earnings per share estimate of 16 cents. So like this is it's somewhat meaningful, and it's going to only continue to grow going forward. So I'm still trying to break out energy completely, so I can work on that and get back to you on just a clean energy only EPS impact. But the change from just my quick take with today's news is 16 cents impact current year.
What do you think of Machine's estimate that Tesla Energy is worth about $100 billion?
Yeah, I think that's reasonably close, to be honest with you. I've done valuations of it before, and I was getting something like $40 per share impact, something like that. So while it's true that it's growing very rapidly, it's so small right now that when you do a discounted cash flow on it, the point at which it gets really crazy numbers is far out into the future. But I mean, like if you're looking out into 2030 something, let's just say early 2030s, and you assume Tesla's kind of reached their, call it 1 terawatt hour of stationary storage goal, then at that point, my rough math is they could be doing like $25 billion of margin, like EBIT margin, let's call it, at that point. So that's really meaningful. But when you discount that back to the present, even with the multiple, it's not like crazy.
Machine.
Just like to thank Matt for agreeing with me. I think that's why Matt should come on the space much more. We need more people who agree with me and less with Yaman and Omar. And I mean, I get his point. Ultimately, if you're going to model out 10, 20 years, you can model out big numbers. But with that, you're going to have to assume, that 2 things. One, there's going to be margin compression because there's going to be competitors. This is not an area of high tech, which Tesla, I certainly believe is ahead, but there's not that much super technology here that can't be copied at least pretty well by other companies. And so we're going to see margin compression, and the multiple in 20 years that you're going to give to it might be like a 10 to 20. So I do think when you discount back, it still probably has some better value than present day, but I just don't think it's drastic. I don't think you're getting like, wow, I got to buy Tesla stock so I can get a 30% return on my energy investment. That's not it. It's now about robotaxis and Optimus.
Omar.
Yeah, I mean, I find the value to be really sort of accretive to the whole business. You have obviously the mega packs that they sell to others, but they also use mega packs to build large supercharging sites. That helps with their vehicle business. They're also using it in their own factories. I mean, I think if you just look at this business, if it keeps growing faster than the auto business for long enough, then eventually it'll be generating more revenue than the auto business. And you just think about it kind of like as, okay, you've got battery cells. What percentage of battery cells are going into cars versus going into stationary storage? I could see a future where Tesla is actually generating more revenue from selling the battery packs for grid and utility storage and home usage than they are for the car hardware. And obviously, sort of the revenue model for the auto business becomes autonomy, ride sharing, that type of thing. And you would imagine the vehicle hardware just becomes kind of compressed and commoditized over time. So that could even, sort of accelerate it further. So although people kind of shrug it off and say, the energy business, I can see a future where they're actually generating more revenue on megapack hardware than on vehicle hardware.
Matt, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I would say I agree with that statement, actually. Like, I can certainly see that future. I'm not sure that I definitely believe that. I mean, if you think of back to Battery Day, the future that they outlined was roughly 1.5 terawatt hours devoted to the auto business, then 1.5 terawatt hours to stationary storage. But because the pricing of like of a vehicle that has, let's say, 75 kilowatt hours of storage in there compared to the pricing of a megapack, which is almost entirely cells, you would need a multiple of the deployments of the vehicle hardware in order to get to the point where Omar's saying. But to his point, I can definitely see that. But as an investor, am I still like more excited about this potentiality in 2040, where there's a very important caveat there, which is hardware, when the thing that actually I think is way more exciting as an investor is what they're doing on autonomy and with Optimus. So while I think this is great, it's definitely accretive to the mission and a good thing for society, and frankly needed by our grid. As investors, it's not the most exciting thing right now, even though I do think it is somewhat exciting.
Matt, in yesterday's space, actually, let me ask this to Robert. Robert, in yesterday's space, we discussed Optimus quite a bit, and there's some disagreements between when Optimus revenues and profits are going to impact Tesla's financial statements. How far do you think is Optimus potential?
I think it's still a few years away. Let's call it 4 years to come out scale and get finished off, and let's say have hundreds of thousands of them. Yeah, we're a bit away still.
Well, Machine says Optimus is going to generate $1 billion in profits before robotaxis, whereas everybody else seems to think still.
I don't believe that. I don't think it's going to get finished off before robotaxi, but I think they could come pretty close to each other. I mean, for an enterprise user, 2 years. For and you're seeing it being used in some places, but it's not done. I mean, all the early humanoids that I see are still too rough to really be what we are expecting. We're still a couple of years away from that.
Machine.
I think one of the key caveats there is you say, when is it going to be finished? And I believe robotaxi, for instance, is something that basically it has to be finished to be revenue generating. Optimus, I don't believe so. I believe Optimus can be tuned to do a specific set of tasks. And in the quote enterprise business, I believe that's where they would go first, where it's very controlled, that they can do those tasks. For instance, I went to Chipotle for lunch. You have two workers in line there scooping options. You know how many options there are? There's like 14 options of things to scoop and put into that burrito. I'm pretty sure an Optimus could stand there in a year or two from now and listen to what you say and scoop out the stuff and put it in the burrito. And, you know, the baiting challenge would be, could it wrap it up nicely? And these workers in California, minimum wage is at least $15. I don't know what they make at Chipotle, $15, $20 an hour. This Optimus is going to pay for itself in like a year or two. So you put these things
until
in
everyone gets E. coli.
Well, listen, you know, then I don't know what we do at that time, but we make sure the robots wash their hands before, you know, touching themselves or touching you. And then, you know, they'll probably be healthy enough. And I think that case where they can do these subset of tasks, which is not full solution, right? And this thing doesn't even have to like walk around that well to do those tasks. I believe that can be less than 2 years away. And whereas robotaxi, you need a full solution. And there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be, you know, built in for robotaxis to operate and logistics. Optimus, you just plug this thing into the wall and tell it to go pick up some spicy salsa and you're good.
Okay, so this is a topic that a lot of people disagree on. And I posted at the top of our screens a question: which will first make $1 billion in profits for Tesla, Optimus or robotaxis? Okay. If everyone in this space replies to that post with their guess, it pays for this space to be free and open for everybody through ad revenue share. So I encourage people to reply to that post at the top of our screens with your guess. Thank you. James?
Hey, about a robot being able to serve food at Chipotle, there's actually a place in Pasadena called Cali Express by Flippy, and the whole place is all the food is automated with robot arms. Every station has like a smaller version of, you know, those robot arms they use for a lot of applications. But in this one, you can go there, you order on a screen, and then these robot arms will make the fries, they make the burgers. It's a pretty simple menu. It's basically like In-N-Out burgers, cheeseburgers, fries. I think they do like chicken nuggets or something. But it's really interesting because it's all robots. There's no people doing anything in there. So
Okay, thank you, James.
Okay.
Omar.
So I think robotaxis are going to make $1 billion first, but I just wanted to clarify a little bit. When we say make $1 billion, are we talking about revenue here? Are we talking about earnings?
Earnings, profits.
Oh, okay.
Machine.
Yeah, I like that, you know, case where you have restaurants already tailor built to use robots. And that just shows you maybe the technology development. But I think what's great about Optimus is that it's plug and play, right? It can go into any environment that already was designed for humans. So you can take all the current restaurants and put one in there. You don't have to build a whole new restaurant. You don't have to tear everything out. You just tear away the employee. And I will give credit to Alex for bringing up this point of why Tesla would unveil a bipedal robot. And I didn't believe it. And that is the singular time Alex has ever said something intelligent.
Alex?
Well, like the difference is like Machine's mom keeps telling him that he's always right, so he, you know, it boosts his confidence. But, you know, that's not true.
Dude, I want to reply. I want to kind of announce again that I have never seen a machine's mom joke and not laugh, even at like 2 a.m. When I wake up randomly and I'm going through X and I see a machine's mom, I will laugh out loud. It's hilarious.
Well, yeah, Machine's Mom's a really good time. You know, it's a fun time, Machine's Mom. You know, everybody takes a turn and, you know.
Oh my.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when you talk about the earnings side, FSD and robotaxi are, I think, much more likely to generate $1 billion first. I mean, you go live in one city, you'll generate $1 billion fairly quickly. For Optimus, I mean, it sounds good in theory, but okay, I've got a kid who I can hire for, let's say, $10 an hour, and they're going to be perfect at making burritos. Okay, maybe the portion sizes are a little bit irregular compared to McDonald's, but they're going to do a pretty good job. Actually, Optimus probably could do more even portion sizes. But, paying $20,000 for a robot versus just hiring a human who I can, pay hourly, it is a pretty tough bar to actually get the same level of quality of labor for the same price. Like humans are actually pretty good when you think about the fact that they can do anything. They're very general purpose. There's a lot of them and you can get them for, 10, $15 an hour, which is pretty cheap. And that comes with financing. You just pay them as you use them. So, I think that they have said that they're going to start using them in the factory. I think that's kind of an important step. Maybe you could kind of count that as earnings if you say, hey, if they're saving on labor, that's kind of like a form of earnings accruing to the bottom line. But ultimately, I think robo taxis are just much further along. Obviously, if you look at the ADAS business, that's already well over $1 billion in earnings. If you look at the robotaxi business, pretty much as soon as they launch, they'll cross that threshold probably within the first year. Whereas Optimus, they still haven't finalized the hardware design yet. So I think really the belief that Optimus will get to $1 billion first easily is rooted in the minimization of a lot of the challenges that come with Optimus, much like people sort of minimize the challenges of FSD for many years. Until you actually try it, you don't fully wrap your head around how difficult these things are.
All right, I'm gonna give Alexander a chance to tell Machine why he's so wrong, and then we're gonna go to Machine. Can you guys hear Alexander?
No.
Okay. Well, the AI thought maybe Machine is right, so AI silenced Alexander.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Omar said. I think maybe the $1 billion, if you say $1 billion of value, it might be Optimus. Because internally, Elon was talking about having like thousands of bots next year working inside the factory. So it might be a close call.
Machine.
Well, I just like that Omar, tried to push back and then he just like shot himself in the foot because he basically said, oh no, I can't do what humans do. Well, I guess actually it would give better portion size control. And he's like, but humans are cheap. It's only like $20 an hour. I'm like, do you know what $20 an hour is per year? That's $40,000. They're gonna pay off Optimus in half a year of labor. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to calculate out like multiple years to figure out, well, if I amortize this over this time, will it pay off? Be like, no, dude, you're gonna have to pay for it. You're just like paying a person for 6 months and then you get it for free. This is the easiest marketing message in the world. So all these cheap employees at your favorite fast food restaurants, including Popeyes, sadly, are gonna go away. And it's sad for people like me, especially the privileged white male who goes into these facilities and they see me and they're like, oh man, we got to give him more food. And then they see me every week and they're like, we know, hey, Joe, Joseph, Jose, whatever. They all know me. And the Optimist is not going to care. The Optimist is going to be cold, indiscriminate. They're going to give me a crappy portion. This sucks.
All right. 2 hours in. Omar, would you like to close us off with your kind of general thoughts? Tomorrow, we're going to continue to discuss robotaxis, Optimus. I encourage people to join this space every single day because this space, I believe, has the best quality discussion on Tesla, long-term potential, so that you're not surprised on days like this when the stock goes up 10%. Omar?
Yeah, so I think Machine actually makes some good points. As long as this product actually existed as we imagine, right? So they haven't demonstrated a final hardware design, the ability to sell it at a reasonable price, mass produce it, that it can walk around without falling. We're all kind of just imagining when they actually do these things. It doesn't seem like a lot of it has actually been done yet. They're working on it. As opposed to FSD, this is actually driving me around. I don't do any manual driving anymore for the most part. So I think they've just accomplished a lot more towards sort of actualizing that product. Um, Now, just in terms of closing thoughts, a lot of people coming into the space today, they see the stock price go up a little bit, but I mean, the stock price going up a little bit, a few extra deliveries here and there, more than analysts expected, is neither here nor there. This company has, I think, a vision that is disruptive to the world. We have sort of this entire economy we've built based on fossil fuels, and they've got a new vision for the infrastructure that underpins our economy. So we're nowhere where this company's going and where this technology is going will make the fluctuations in stock price today look like a blip. It'll make it look like a rounding error when accounting for splits and other things. It'll be a few cents when you're talking about the long term. I mean, I think we're really looking at the birth of one of, the Apple or the Google of our time here. And really, until every power generation source is replaced with renewables or nuclear and batteries, until every car is zero emissions and autonomous, and until every boring, lame, and repetitive job is replaced by an AI robot that can automate it, then we're just getting started. So we are nowhere. It's day one for where we want to take this company. And, to everyone on the Tesla team, thank you for making these deliveries happen. To everyone who took delivery of one of these Teslas this quarter, thank you. You are making this all happen. You're providing the funds. You're keeping these people employed who are working on all these things that are important to us. So tell your friends, show them FSD, show them Tesla, and keep ordering the cars, keep using FSD, and people will thank you. They'll say, "Wow, my life is much better now. Thanks for showing me that I should get a Tesla." So that's really what it's all about. People taking delivery. I mean, that's what we're here talking about: deliveries of megapacks, deliveries of cars. The people taking those deliveries are making change happen. They ordered the production of that car. And when we order these cars, they can make more of them, more get into the world. After we're done with them, they'll go on to a second owner, a third owner. They'll be out in the world, and as they're used, they won't generate any air pollution. So Yeah, it's a really good movement that's happening, and it's good to see the people who believe in it. Because a lot of people, they buy the cars, they love them, then they buy the stock too. And it's good to see those people getting rewarded as well. I think they're going to do very well. The people who buy and hold long term, and don't get caught up in all the stupidity. You saw people like Gary Black, he sold, panic sold, average price of 202. His shares are already, above that. Kathy Wood has a price target of 2000. So it's easy to get caught up in the moment and panic and sell and say, oh, good, it didn't go down a little bit. But in the bigger picture, it's all a blip. So I think really the
All
people
right.
who are left are big picture thinkers.
All right. To all the Tesla employees in the call, thank you very much for a great quarter. Congratulations. Thank you, Omar. Thank you, everyone who joined today. It's been a great space. I highly recommend people to listen to it from the very beginning. And I will talk to you guys next time. Thank you and take care.